Okay, so this is the video for Excel assignment 2. This is an advanced Excel assignment. It's a company payroll spreadsheet that we can turn into a template if we wanted to. What you're going to do is lay out your payroll sheet or your spreadsheet like this. And what I did here was I selected all of these cells. If you hold the left mouse button down and you drag across, you can select the number of cells. And that's what I did here. I selected all these cells and then I hit merge cells here, and it allowed me to merge all these cells. I also went in and hit format cells, and I picked alignment, and I centered my cells and I put it in the middle, which means my text is put in the middle and centered. I also had text wrap on, which meant that if I wanted to wrap or if I wanted to have more text in here, what it does is it gets to the end of the cell and it creates another line and it keeps going, and what it will do is expand this cell to accept all the text that's put in there, and it will continue to do that until I get done. The other thing that I did is I selected all of these as well. I made them bold, I centered the text, and then I right mouse clicked again, went back into format, and I set my vertical selection to the middle and my horizontal to center, and I have my text wrap on also in my properties for my alignment, and I hit OK. So now what we need to do is we have all of our information for our employees put in, our hourly rate, our regular hours, and our overtime hours. I'm going to go ahead and calculate the first person's hours, and then I'm going to copy and paste them down because that's going to save me some time when I go in and calculate everything. As long as I do it correctly, when I copy and paste down, it will figure all the calculations for me and adjust accordingly to my rows. It'll keep the B and C information the same and the D information the same, but what it will do is allow me to go in and calculate my rows here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to hit equals, type in equal parenthesis, whoops, let's do that again, equals parenthesis, and I'm going to say B3 times, and that's the asterisk, C3. Okay, and I'm going to close the parentheses, hit enter, and that gives me 40 times 1950. And if you want to get your calculator out to see if that's right, you can. And then I'm just going to click and drag down. What it's done is, if we notice, it's adjusted itself for every new row. Okay, and this isn't an absolute value, this is a relative value. It's relative to its placement, okay, in its row. If we want it to be absolute, never changing, we could actually put in, we could put a dollar sign in front of the B and a dollar sign in front of the C, telling the computer that B and C never change. We don't need to do that because we know that it's not changing location. If we were scrolling across or if we were doing something else that was really important, we would do that. And we'll talk about that when we do the withholding down here, when we change that. Okay, so I noticed that I have two pays that are incorrect though, and it's because we didn't account for the overtime hours, and that is right here in Baker. We have 10 overtime hours, and in Darwin we have 12 overtime hours. The way we go in and figure that is we're going to take the original calculation, and notice when I click on that calculation it tells me that these two formulas right here, these two cells are involved in my formula. I want to keep that calculation because we know that's right, but we need to calculate now for overtime. And overtime is billed at time and a half. So what we're going to do is we're going to start another parenthesis or another equation because we're going to add it to our original equation. And we know that time and a half is the hourly rate times 1.5. So what we're going to do is we're going to say B3, or B4 in this case, times 1.5, because that's our hourly rate, times the number of hours that we have. Okay, and that gives us our hourly rate times 1.5 times the number of hours, and in this case we put 10, but we don't want to put 10, we want to put what? We want to put the cell, which is D4, because if I put 10 in there, then I got to go back into the equation and change it, and I don't want to do that. So I want to put D4. I'm going to hit enter, and my hourly rate now is 440, so it was different before. Okay, and I'll do the same thing here. But watch what happens if I change my hourly rate here. If I change my overtime hours and I say 5, I hit enter, notice that it automatically adjusted. We were at 440 here, now we're at 380. So now I'm going to go back, change that to 10. Notice right here on my 380, as soon as I hit enter, it automatically updates it for me. That's why we're using cells, because we want to make sure that when we go to change these, if anything in this changes, let's say we change the dollar amount for Darwin here and we say he got a dollar raise. Okay, we're going to put the dollar sign in there so we don't have to mess around with it. And we hit a dollar raise. We're at 450 now. We hit enter and notice that it went up to 480. So it automatically updates itself. And that's one of the reasons we want to keep using our spreadsheet in this way, because it saves us from having to go in and make the change in our calculation using numbers. That's why we use the cells. Obviously, that's one of the reasons. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to take our withholding tax and create a formula that says our withholding is a certain amount. One of the things though I'm going to do is right here I'm going to type in 28, okay, and I'm going to hit the percentage right there. Well, we got a problem because it isn't 2800%, it's 28%. This is where a lot of people make their mistake. I want you to remember that 28% is 0.28. Okay, so when we hit percent, now we have 28% here. Same way with 6.5%. So we have to go 0.65 and watch, but watch what happens when I do that, because that says it's 65%. No, that's not correct. What we need to remember is these are in terms of 100. So we need to go 0.065, hit the percentage, and now we have 6.5%. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this percentage right here and I'm going to times it by this to figure out what the withholding tax is. Okay, so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say equals let's go back, equals parentheses, and I want to say E3, okay, times, and that's our asterisk, and then I'm going to say B16. But here's the thing, this is where we need what's called the absolute cell reference. Okay, that's a dollar sign, and now I'm going to say B $16, close my parenthesis. So that means B16 never changes in this equation. That the dollar sign means that is the absolute cell and column, row and column reference. I hit enter and notice it says my withholding tax is $223.44. At 28% of our pay, that seems roughly about right. Okay. Now I'm going to copy and drag this all the way down, and you're going to see how this makes it a lot easier for me to figure all this out, because notice the B16 up here, my input line, never changes. The row changes, but the formula never changes, and we want to make sure we recognize that, because that can never change. We're going to always use this in our equation, always. Okay, we're going to do the same thing with our Social Security tax. We're going to take our gross pay and write the equation so that we have the equals parentheses. We're going to take our gross pay, which is E3, okay, times the FICA, which is your federal income tax allowance, or it's federal income tax or whatever, or withholding tax for Social Security. B17, again, it's an absolute value, so we want to come in and B $17, close the parentheses, hit enter, and it's 51.87. Now I can click and drag that formula by going over here into the corner of this box and dragging it down, and it gives me the absolute value for each one of these rows. Okay, we want to do the same thing now. We want to take our net pay, but we don't need to use absolute values here. What we do need to do though is say, what is our take home? What are we going to be taking home after all this stuff's taken out? So we know that we want to take our gross pay, which is an E3, minus, okay, F3 minus G3. Close our parentheses, hit enter, and that's our gross pay. Now we can do the exact same thing we did before, click and drag down, and that gives us everything we need to know. So this is the gross pay. Now watch, if I go in and change my hours, we can save this template and use it over and over and over again. If we add employees, we can add a row, go in and make changes and just add them. So that's the nice part about that, is that we don't have to worry about coming in here and doing anything different. Okay, once we've set up the formula, we've set up the formula. Okay, now I want to go in and I need some totals. I need my total payroll. So I'm going to hit sum. And notice that it says, oh look, I'm going to take this information and sum it for you. I just want to move this up to here. So I'm going to click this little blue box and move it up. So now I only want this information here summed. I hit enter, and that's called auto sum. That's the auto sum key right there. So all I have to do now is I can do the exact same thing I did before. Click here, drag across. Once I know my equation's correct, I can go through and get my totals that way. Okay, so again, let me go ahead and do that for you. What I did was I'm here, I clicked auto sum. It gives me everything, because auto sum gives me everything above me, and it recognizes numbers, and it unfortunately recognizes the empty spaces just above where I want the total. To fix that, all I have to do is click this bottom blue box and drag it up. So now it changes. You'll notice that it went from B11 to B10 here. Hit enter and we get our total. Remember when we clicked and dragged, we're going to click and drag the formula across just like we did when we were down. We're going to click right here, drag it across. Okay, and nothing has to have an absolute value in this, because we already took care of that with our withholding and our Social Security tax, so we don't have to worry about that. Okay, these are our total hours for our payroll. This is our total hourly rate in our payroll. Here's how many overtime hours we had, and then here is how much we had in payroll. Problem was, I just realized we didn't figure overtime hours here. Okay, so one of the things I want to do is I'm just going to click this formula, drag it down, because I know that formula is correct. The problem is it wouldn't drag it for me. So now I got to go back. We played with this formula here. So I'm going to hit copy, and I'm going to come down here. Let's see if we can paste that formula. I don't want to overwrite the existing data. What I wanted to do was the cell. So let's go back. It's a good exercise for us. We're going to plus. We're going to figure our overtime rate again is, in this case, it's B6 times 1.5 times, and again it's our overtime hours, which is D6. Close our parentheses, so make sure we've got B6, 1.5, and D6. Okay, hit enter, and notice it updates everything. Our payroll automatically changed here, all our numbers. We're going to do the same thing here with Gershwin. We're going to go ahead and add his overtime again. We're going to go B7 times 1.5 times our number of overtime hours, which is D7. Close our parentheses, hit enter, and it updated again. So now if I go in and I make these changes, I can, let's say Charles Darwin worked a 40-hour week again. Notice our numbers here. As soon as I hit enter, it went from 720 to 870. So this is why spreadsheets are really great, is that once we've created it and we know we've got our calculation correct, we can actually just go in and change our hours or change our hourly rate, okay, or give it overtime hours or take overtime hours away, and it automatically updates itself. As long as we know the formula is correct, we're good to go. Now the last part of this assignment, you'll notice that on Step 8, Frank Zappa wants to know what the effect of his pay is going to be when they raise FICA. So what I would do is I would come down here and say raised FICA, okay, and that I would make that the new FICA, which is 0.075. We hit the percentage up here, And then I would just put Frank Zappa. You can put, Zappa down here if you wanted to. Frank Zappa, hit enter. One of the things we can do is take all his information here, or we could actually come over here and create a new set of cells here and update it. But what I want you to do is I want you to take Frank's information and figure out what his new net pay will be with the changes in his Social Security. Okay, so that's pretty easy because all we have to do is reference this cell. You can come down here, you'll figure out Frank's new Social Security because all we have to do is take his gross pay, times it by this, and then we'll minus everything again and we'll get a new net pay. So what you'll do is enter those in here, okay, in this line here. And when you're done, save it, send it to me as your last name underscore CSS 43, your section number underscore Excel 2. So again, your last name underscore CSS 43, your section number underscore Excel 2, and then send it in an email. So if you have any questions, email me, call me, or drop me a line on the discussion board. Thanks.